Welcome to Between Two Gongs. So I'm here with Thomas Prabhu. Met Thomas at the Hare Krishna temple, and since we've not stopped talking about philosophy and psychospiritual models, transformation. So, who are you? Who is Thomas?
Jai Prabhupada. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Well, hi, I'm Thom Elliott, and I've been involved in spirituality seriously anyway, for the greater part of my adult life. And I've been very fortunate in that I have a lot of leisure time in order to study Sanskrit books, read, study European philosophers, because in order to get to the type of realization, you need to understand the really sort of deep truths of spiritual life. It really takes a whole lot of reading, study incredibly important in addition to the practical elements of transforming your life from the sort of,
House car job.
House car job is a great way to put it. Yeah, this sort of, in Krishna Consciousness, material attachments. You're so driven by things that ultimately have almost no meaning at all. Once the realization of the emptiness of that pursuit becomes clear, usually through some traumatic event or, just the shift in the horrible quality of the world, watching the news or whatever. And then what do they tend to do? They tend to either go deeper into nihilism, which is the, modern moral aesthetic.
Which is, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care about anything. There's no meaning to anything. What matters if I live or die, so long as I'm having a good time occasionally, and it doesn't, whatever the content of that having a good time is totally relative. Like the mantra of our contemporary world, you hear, morality is subjective. You hear that every day, like 10 times a day, whatever you're listening. Morality is subjective. And that just means, human beings can't judge one another because we're all in this morass of moral ignorance. And so, me personally...
Yeah, let's rewind back to, how did you come into the psychospiritual path? What life things led to that?
I grew up a very mundane, suburban, Midwestern world. And that also happened to include, tens of suicides and, people becoming addicted to hard drugs early in life, or dramatic...
Friends?
Yeah, friends and people just people in the scene or whatever. People I knew who, had started killing themselves over things like adultery between boyfriend and girlfriend, stuff like that. That started happening in my world when I was like 15, 16. The first time I got in trouble with the police, I was in a cemetery with a couple of girls smoking cigarettes at 16 or 17, something like that. I was fully ensconced in the nihilistic world, no question, and I'm a real sensitive person, just that constitutionally, I just am, I take things in from the world, so maybe a little harder than many anyway. Those, certainly traumatic experiences about the futility of life that characterized the first, 32 years of my existence, and then I went to college, which at certain points was disastrous, but then I eventually did pretty well, and I had a master's degree in Western philosophy, and I studied with some great philosophers or what have you. But the nagging problem with the nihilism of this world and it seems hopeless to resolve even for yourself, Not only can I do nothing about the world and its just descent, but also the control I myself have over just my little world is almost none as well, you know. Like many religious people, I'm sure, that sea of ignorance and nihilism, which I just felt was overwhelming my existence, and I felt powerless to do anything about. I sought out purposely to transcend my material nature. That is the attraction and part of the power of broadly Hinduism, and its many varieties, but the specific, Westerner-oriented Hare Krishna movement. It's almost entirely driven by this desire to transcend your material life and realize the fullness of your spiritual nature as a devoted, loving servant of the God who wants nothing else from you other than love. So the appeal of Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of love, and love of God specifically, that became very powerful in my life.
Later?
Yeah, later. Yeah, for sure.
So was there, in those, say, teenage rebellious, should I call them rebellious, or
not
nihilistic, existential dread,
sure,
meaningless sense of
right,
disconnection? Was there any, what was the first spiritual practice that you came upon? Or how did you come to God at all?
Like many, I was raised Catholic. My mother but I had no attachment to it. I enjoyed some of the music. I liked the sort of insular world of Catholicism. But at that time of my life, Christianity rang real hollow. The people who I encountered that claimed to be Christians or followers of Christ, this is in the mid-90s, very hypocritical, very themselves a form of, nihilism that we don't even really have. Now that we're in a truly post-Christian age, and the average Christians that you meet, they don't know anything about it.
So when you say that don't know much about it, do you mean sort of like the esoteric roots and the things that it was built on?
Absolutely.
I haven't looked into much of the esoteric side of that, but I know that it goes way deeper than what I also grew up as a Christian. And I feel as though I scratched the surface on what was presented to me as to what is actually available in Christianity. So I don't know. What are some of those deeper layers, some of the esoteric things?
I believe that if you want to have an honest study of the Bible, you have to go to the most scholarly version of it, where it's not a romanticized ideological picture that you get in a lot of these interpretations, but an attempt at the most scholarly retranslations of the best available texts. And that definitely, bar none, is the Oxford Annotated Bible. Hello out there in TV land. If you want to read the Bible and try to understand it from a non-ideologically poisoned version of it, Oxford Annotated Bible. Then, so while you're digging into the absolute deepest truths that can only be explicated through a critical apparatus, footnotes, maps, the Bible is full of references that a modern human would not know. There's a lot to learn just from the Bible. It's as deep, like all truly profound texts. You could study the Bible honestly and never hit the bottom. there's a whole school of thought, biblical hermeneutics, the science of interpretation of the Bible grew out of Germany in the 18th century when, the German Enlightenment was underway. And anyway, but then what is the Bible and that world, what does it have to offer mystically, personally, spiritually? Have to look to the Gnostic texts, the
Gnostic Gospels.
Absolutely. The Gospel of Truth, Thunder, Perfect Mind, anything that was contained in the Nag Hammadi library, which also has some Platonic texts in it as well. And that, of course, makes sense. The only Western apparatus to try to grapple with the infinite profundity of the Bible when it was first being proliferated was Platonism. Nietzsche called Christianity Platonism for the masses.
Okay.
And so the original interpreters of Christianity from the so-called church fathers, but you also had the heresiarchs who had non-standard, not combative with the other church fathers, their interpretations. And so you had the more, proto-socialistic communal version of Valentinian Christianity. Bart Ehrman, he's got a whole book, Lost Christianities, on the various versions that died out after the major threads were consolidated over hundreds of years. But Platonism, that was the Gnostic Gospels, they're oriented towards the experiential, mystical truth of the teachings of Christ that are not contained. They're there as well. Those Gnostic ideas are in the Bible itself. But, like any path of wisdom, it's just harder to get out of it. In Hinduism, they call it jnana yoga, the path of, or the being bound to wisdom, attempting to understand.
So we have extracting wisdom and symbolism from the Bible,
right,
as a practice.
Right.
We also have this in the Gita.
Yes.
When you're sitting with one or the other, what drew you more towards this path then? If they're both so powerful and that you can extract bottomless wisdom from either one, why the Gita or why Vaishnavism?
It was a long journey to that, for sure, and with many threads that got me there eventually. I had always been interested in Indian thought since college. I'd gotten involved with a particular version of Hinduism while there, the version of Hinduism popular amongst Western scholars, which is called Advaita Vedanta, which is the non-dualist interpretation of the Vedas, the oldest.
Non-dualist. I feel like that's an important piece to highlight. What is non-dualist?
So metaphysics, the structure of existence, not merely the physics of it, but how do you characterize it ontologically in its being? How does it be? And there are, a few broad theories on the nature of existence. And one of them is non-dual, that while there appears to be this world and nothing besides, the idea is that there's no real difference between any entity, and that the world of sense is a sort of illusion.
The senses.
Yeah, the world that I'm able to take in, I can only know radically imperfectly. And I guess this would be a time to say also that, I'm a radically imperfect and limited thinker. And many things that I'm saying are just things that I've heard before, I can't vouch for the total truth of anything that I say at all.
We're all just collecting notes, right?
Absolutely. And I think my bar for the possibility of human knowledge is incredibly, I guess it's high. I believe that it's very unlikely that human beings are able to actually gain knowledge. That ignorance.
In this age.
And not just in general.
Okay.
The whole time, humans, because we evolved to survive rather than behold eternal truths in their fullness, our thinking is incredibly narrow. And it's related to pattern recognition largely so that we can survive. Versus the acquiring of information. Information is infinite. Our language, has evolved to attempt to, we can make continuously unique utterances with a limited set in perpetuity, be able to speak and say unique things in a sense every time, but that is, again, an incredibly imprecise, radically finite means by which to acquire information, which is infinite. And so just the sheer scale of difference between what could possibly enter my tiny human electrical bag of watery meat, that is going to be incredibly limited.
He's right.
And so this is maybe one of the ways that I guess there's no better word than pessimist, but I'm definitely an epistemological pessimist. Epistemology is the branch of philosophy that specifically studies knowledge. When does one know something truly? Is it merely your justified true belief, or there's a whole history and argumentation about epistemology? And so because of those facts, I believe are facts about the radically finite human perceptual, intellectual apparatus by nature, versus the infinity of information, possible information, and then ongoingness of information, which the philosopher Alain Badiou called incomplete multiplicities of infinities. In every direction is how information works, sort of. I can't even know 1% of that expanding infinite information in every direction. That chaotic picture of information pouring out of phenomena that human beings, even large groups of human beings, studying it their entire lives, could they themselves never achieve 1% of the possible total information. And so I am epistemologically pessimistic about the possibility of human beings gaining that sort of material, absolute truth about phenomena, entities.
Would you call that enlightenment? Because like an all-knowing sense, it sounds like what I'm hearing is like it's hard to reach full knowingness, and to me, yes. I'm attributing enlightenment to full knowingness.
Well, enlightenment or liberation is a spiritual quality. It's a immanent quality, right? From an incredible complexity, say, of your neurons firing. Your personality is a sort of immanent quality. It emerges from all of that connectivity going on. Liberation or enlightenment, mukta, is a spiritual quality and immanence from the mundane nature of the infinity of information. And that, I believe, this gets into what I have grown to believe or accepted as an adult, is that there's Aristotelian knowledge about the world and the phenomenological nature of human existence can be categorized, and there are universals that can be discerned through thousands of years of human wisdom, but there is also revealed wisdom. There is material,
glimmers of hope,
from the other side that are so strange, so counterintuitive sometimes, that in itself is a sort of token of their reality. Like Kierkegaard, Soren Kierkegaard, the greatest philosopher from Copenhagen, and the grandfather of Christian, specifically existentialism. One of the reasons he thought the Bible was just indisputably true is because what human being could think in this way, our greatest minds, they've never come up with a Bible 2 or a Bhagavad Gita 2.
Bible 2, yeah. Where's the sequel?
Yeah, and so that in itself is a sort of hint at its truly otherworldliness. It's good to bring up Kierkegaard in this context anyway. Kierkegaard, very much like in some ways the picture I've been trying to describe, said that you're confronted not by the infinity of incomplete multiplicity or the multiples of infinity, of incomplete multiplicities. He just said he reduced that to the absurd. You're confronted, you're a very ignorant thing, and this world, you're being bombarded with totally absurd, basically incomprehensible whirlwind of events. And you are going to die. And nobody can die for you. It's you that's going to die, right? And so you've got to figure it out, buddy. And so Kierkegaard, the very famous cliche to take a leap of faith, comes from Kierkegaard's writing and one of his basic ideas. You've got to make a choice. You out there in TV land, you've got to make a choice. You're going to die.
What's the choice?
That's the thing. What is the choice?
Seems like there isn't one.
So for Kierkegaard, it was Christianity. It doesn't make sense. Nothing as like, that's my choice. I'm going to worship Christ brutally. And he wrote a book, Attack on Christendom. It reads like a nihilistic account of the Christianity of his day, but only because he's from the Protestant's Protestant point of view. No Protestant is great enough, is fully committed, single-minded in their fanatical devotion, like Jesus' brother James commands people to be in their worship of Christ, to eschew all double-mindedness.
So is he saying he's using Christianity as a way to cope with the knowing of death, to basically cope with that heaviness?
Death and the incomprehensibility of the world.
Being not able to comprehend life itself.
Right.
So we might as well find some...
You've got to choose.
System of some sort, which in his case he's saying Christianity is the system.
Right.
In your case currently, it's more...
Definitely, I'm a devotee of Krishna. My life, in a way, revolves around my loving relationship and the infinitely deepening well of Krishna's love that only, in the same way that information grows continuously and is only ever greater and greater, that's exactly the same picture of Krishna's love and Krishna's beauty and Krishna's mystical opulences. They only grow. He's only ever more beautiful, more entrancingly, deliciously attractive. And what does he want from me? Love. And that love takes a form of devotional practices, things you do every day, or try to do every day, or aspire to do every day. Mm-hmm. Krishna's infinite love, the infinite love. That's,
devotion. This is a practice of deep devotion.
And a devotion that is itself its own goal. You're part of the Hare Krishna lifestyle and religious devotion is chanting the Lord's names every day. a minimum one time around a japa mala, but ideally is 16 rounds of 108 beads.
So this commitment, this discipline, heartfelt, true devotion. I feel like, so for me, like, yeah, when I'm chanting and doing japa, there's a hump to get over. There's like, at first the mind just looping, so it's all here. And then there's the thinking about, or there's coming to recognition that the mind is doing this thing. And then there's eventually a breakthrough to this sort of open, much broader space. And one of my teachers that first introduced me to japa used to say, we do not, well, this was more for Bhakti Kirtan.
Sure.
We do not sing because we are happy because we sing.
Truly.
So this sort of, I'm not happy now, or I feel disconnected now, or I feel purposeless now. So start singing, even though I don't feel like it, and eventually the thing starts to change. It's like fake it till you make it, and then you're breaking through to this thing that's authentic. It's like really there, really
Absolutely.
exists.
Totally. That's the part of the power of Kirtan, the Sankirtan movement, which was initiated by what we believe is an avatar of Krishna on the earth. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu initiated the Sankirtan movement in the 16th century in southern India. And so, like Christ, in a sense, taking a much more complicated religion that's sort of closed, like Hinduism was a loop where you do there's all these incredibly complicated rituals, and there's just so much to it that only a certain class of people could practice it. It became very locked into a certain thing. And then, like Christ with Hebrew Jewish religion, opening the door back to infinity by simplifying the religion in a certain way. And so Chaitanya reduced Hinduism basically to chanting the holy names of God, eating food that is offered to God first, the Bhagavad Gita, and singing together in congregation the holy names of God. The food, the association, the reading, the chanting, those are the major elements, And what happens when you're singing kirtan? The words are the same over and over again. People have been singing the Hare Krishna mantra for hundreds of years now, and it doesn't get boring. There's an expression in Krishna consciousness: the more you do it, the more you want to do it. Mm-hmm. And you get locked into the sort of, it's like being the conductor of a train or something, leading kirtan. And so once you're locked into it, you can't stop, really. You're leading the kirtan, and then it's call and response. Everyone is, and so the energy of the exchange between the people and doing it to please God personally, which God is very pleased by and enjoys very much. It's an energetic circuit that Chaitanya and devotees, you want to and encourage people. It should be something you do 24 hours a day. You sleep in Krishna consciousness. You eat in Krishna consciousness. Your relationships with others are colored by, your relationship to Krishna and the other person's relationship to Krishna, and the fact that that person also has Krishna in their heart, and I have Krishna in my heart. And
so to the people out there that are, say, struggling with depression, grief, existential dread, why am I here? What would you say? What would the monks there at the temple say to that? How would you respond to that?
Well, life does have a purpose. Firstly, human life specifically has a purpose, which is very unfashionable comment a very unfashionable point of view today.
To someone who thinks that there is no purpose.
Right, no purpose at all. And so the purpose of human life is self-realization. That is the purpose of human existence.
How do we define that?
By realizing your constitutional position within reality as either Krishna's friend or Krishna's parent or Krishna's lover or whatever your relationship is with Krishna, God. And that relationship allows you to truly realize who you really are, your most authentic self.
Most authentic self.
Yes.
I feel like that alone could be an entire lecture on just authenticity.
Absolutely.
I remember Ram Dass saying something like, yoga meaning like the full practice of yoga, not just the postures, sadhana, is not about niceness, it's about authenticity.
Yes.
And he talks about those first layers of the stages of coming into that practice and starting to, at the beginning stages, starting to sort of take on this unfamiliar role and to sort of put on the beads and to put on the garb and to sort of play the role in a way that isn't deeply authentic. And eventually something starts to break through. Authenticity being like far surpassing any grabbing onto a model at all. I think of it as like a reduction process, the whole path of these psychospiritual clingings and misformations starting to come into the perspective of the person and seeing where I'm shooting myself in the foot, seeing this psychological sort of twist over here and over there, and journaling this sort of slow process of dismantling my stuckness. And I've noticed that with bhakti, it's sort of unexpectedly at times an epiphany will come through, just like in the middle of mantra. Or
yes, that's how it happens. That's why they call it realization.
Realization.
Yeah.
Unexpected.
That's right. I was chanting one time, japa, and I had a girlfriend who had a son, and I loved that child very much. And after 5 rounds or so, the child just, in my mind's eye, popped in, and my feelings of love for the child or whatever, the child in my mind's eye appeared blue, like Krishna. And I then felt what I had a taste of what a parental love of God must feel like, and it instantly reduced me to tears. I was very fortunate in that there was only 3 or 4 devotees in the temple hall in the early morning when we were chanting. And so many people did not see me weeping. But in that same way, like I didn't think that thought. I didn't purposely put it in there or bring it up. I was not anticipating at all. And then that realization, it was so gigantic and pure, could not have been manufactured. But more to your point about authenticity, it brought to mind 2 different, again, Western existentialist thinkers. Blaise Pascal from 17th century France. And he said he was a child genius, basically, like a prodigy. He invented like a calculator in 17th century France, and there's in fact a unit of measurement in heat called pascals.
Okay, yeah.
And so he was, even today, and he was known for some mathematical achievements as well. I don't remember what they are off the top of my head, but he wrote a text simply in Pennices. My French is great, as you can see, but it's just, I think, means writings. But Blaise Pascal's writings, he's just got one journal about his thoughts. And so he was possessed by an obscure now, but at the time was a live debate in Christianity. And he gave some advice, if you struggle with belief, bend your knees, mutter the prayers, and eventually belief will come. And so what feels inauthentic at first, also the colloquialism, just fake it till you make it, that truly does work. That is how it starts. You have the desire to get involved in a thing. Mm-hmm. After doing it and doing it and doing it, then eventually it just is what you believe. It is what you do.
Yeah, we're like beings of mimicry.
Yes.
We have to mimic our parents first,
right.
Our siblings, and one of the biggest things for me is the why. Like, why are we here? And I feel like I ask every spiritual teacher / shaman / monk this question, and I never seem to get the satisfying answer that I'm like yearning for. It's like I want some clear, like we were made in a petri dish by this race, and then they were created by this and this and this. Right? Sure. It's like I want to know the thing, and no one knows. Ironically, no one knows exactly how we got here, and I feel like there's this nagging need to know the why. But listening to Yugal's lectures and such, and tapping into some of the deeper layers of the Krishna consciousness, you started touching on that a little bit. What's your take on our why, or what do the monks say, like exactly why we're here? Why are we here?
Every tradition is going to have a different answer in some sense. I think it's, for me, very easy to say, well, it's not to fritter away one's time in an office or in some desperately tedious pursuit to make others money in a rat race of materialistic desires. And so to me, it's pretty clear that the nihilistic world, the point of human existence, or the why are we here, is not answered by that.
Yeah, do you think it has to do with, like, for me, I feel like it's a subtle difference between having those things and filling a void by chasing those things. The overworker, the workaholic.
Yeah.
On one hand, maybe somebody who is very passionate, say, for example, like we got the spark to write a book about psychospiritual, some download that came through, and then now I'm working endlessly, and like somebody from the outside might say, geez, you're so obsessed, there's something off about this, and I say, well, from my perspective right now, this is very important, and I wonder, because somebody who is chasing material things may have that same feeling as though they're chasing something important.
Right. And
though in Krishna consciousness and in any other spiritual path, really, there's this recognition that the things are passing, the material things are dying off. So not to focus there, to shift your energy back to God awareness. And then I noticed that there's something in me, this sort of like Gemini, or balancing beam, so to speak, where I'm like, embodiment and being in the world is a thing as well. Like the path to self-realization from Roberto Saggioli, where he's got this diagram, this chart, and on one axis there's the y-axis, that's the transpersonal, connecting with the infinite, Krishna consciousness, and then the other axis is like house, car, job, like holding it together, being, like Ram Dass says, taking the curriculum, so to speak, like being a human. And so I'm like, how do we balance that? And so the Roberto Saggioli's model here is that it's the diagonal squiggly line is the self-realization path. It's like both.
Sure. Balancing
the transpersonal with the embodiment and doing in the world. But to your point, I feel like what that would look like, from my perspective, is a deep psychospiritual daily practice of connecting with God in whichever ways those lined up for the person, however they felt most connected. Maybe that's singing, whatever that is. But then the house car job, or the practical life aspect would be maybe something that serves people. Maybe something that isn't just simply trying to gain more possessions, gain more material things, just for the sake of, well, what would that be? It'd be, look at me and all of my stuff. It's a very egoic chase. Right. And I feel like maybe that's the transition that happens when coming to self-realization, is redirecting that God energy back into practical life, but in a way that is creating community projects, spotlighting friends and family in their work, and encouraging people, this kind of thing.
There's a whole grahastha, worldly, business owner spirituality that's totally available.
Grahastha.
Grahastha. There's a system of caste that is sort of your natural way of being in the world, and grahastha is for people who have families and
the path businesses. Of the householder?
Yeah, the householder.
Okay, the householder. Yeah. The spiritual path of the householder.
Right. And then, there have been yogis who have spoken to fabulously wealthy people as well and offered them illumination, like Mahesh Yogi, the yogi to the Beatles, and David Lynch, and
Osho. Did Osho have like a whole fleet of Rolls Royces?
That's right.
Yeah.
So there is, in each different ashrama, there's spiritual liberation offered by certain, for the Krishna conscious, the sort of Gaudiya, Vaishnava, Bhakti, Sankirtana movement. The motivation is to extinguish your karma completely through akarmic acts, which defeat the snares or the gunas that keep you tied to the wheel of samsara, the wheel of the eternal return of your spirit soul into various entities again and again and again, based on your good and bad karma. The Hare Krishna movement is aimed at extinguishing the cycle of births and deaths through the practices, singing and dancing for the Lord's pleasure, chanting the Lord's name, eating the food offered to God first, reading the Bhagavad Gita. Those things.
Simplification of it all.
That's right. Simplification of one's life, in a sense, but also that after one has simplified your life in those ways, you're much less likely to get entangled with horrible people at the bar, or you're much less likely to run into that guy who has cocaine, and you might not ordinarily seek it out, but there he is, and the best kung fu is not being there. The not being exposed to things that will lead you down destructive paths, associating with people who are themselves purposely trying to destroy themselves or unconsciously trying to destroy themselves.
Yeah, so addiction, I feel like this is a whole topic too.
Yeah.
This is the crux of addiction, where we have filling the void.
Right.
But the person who is addicted may not even be aware that that's what's going on.
Absolutely.
There's this feeling of the void that's wanting to be had. And so chasing all of those things, chasing highs to fill this void.
Can't be done. The void sucks. That's what voids do. Void isn't just like an in-ground pool. And
It's a
that's it.
vacuum.
It's a vacuum.
Yeah.
Nihilism sucks, you know?
Nature abhors a vacuum.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this is the important piece, is someone who is stuck in addiction and can't seem to break it, because every time they maybe try, they're focusing on getting rid of the thing first, right? I'm going to just try cold turkey to quit XYZ, but there's nothing to fill that void.
Except for other bad things,
Right.
gambling, terrible relationships, you know. There's infinite things to chase to try to fill that void, and none of them will satisfy people. That's the problem. You know, oh, I've quit this one, but then, you know, now I've got 5 girlfriends, and now I'm going to instead, now I'm addicted to meetings. You know, I'm going to
Addicted to meetings.
Yeah,
Wow.
NA and AA, and I'm going to the sexaholics meetings, and I'm, and those things, you know, those are, I suppose, helpful for just not being on.
Working your way up the ladder.
Right.
For sure.
The only thing that truly satisfies, at least, and this might sound dogmatic or rhetorical, but it's, you know, for a colorful character like me that's been through the mill and have seen really some of the truly horrifying elements of human existence, for me, the only thing that, you know, could possibly fill that void is something that's infinitely greater and continuously, it's called ruchi. You develop this taste for it. Lobe, greed for ever more encountering Krishna's love. Playing kirtan on a Thursday night with all of your, devotee associates or whatever, and the power of that meeting, the energy created, and the reverberating hearing the names of God. You know, you leave that with those names, just, you know, the ancient melodies coming through your spirit soul, radiating through your gross material body, but also your subtle body, your mind, your intelligence, saturated, steeped in the honey of Krishna's love. And, it's fried, as Ramakrishna said, fried in the butter of Jnana, wisdom. So it's steeped in the honey of Bhakti, the Lord's love, and fried in the butter of Jnana, wisdom.
Yeah, replacing one addiction for another, but becoming almost sort of addicted to God.
Absolutely.
I've heard this said, you have to want God like a man whose hair is on fire wants a bucket of water. Like, you have to really...
Run to the bead bag, run to the murtis, run to the spiritual master, the guru tattva, the absolute truth of guru, that human beings in our ignorance need a spiritual master, someone who is an expert at guru, to move from darkness to light, from tamas to sattva. Now, even sattva, tamas, rajas, of course, those are the 3 gunas, the binds that keep us on the wheel of samsara. But they're ascending so that eventually you transcend even goodness.
And what are the 3 gunas?
The 3 gunas are what they call the modes of material nature. All phenomena, all entities are characterized by mixtures of the 3 modes of material nature. And so even there, a sort of heuristic simplification of reality itself in all phenomena, all entities, into 3 elements that are part of reincarnation, keeping you locked into that infinite cycle of births and deaths. And so, tamas, darkness, ignorance. I've also seen it translated as like heaviness or dullness. The second...
And so even with that, then we eat foods. If we are in this tamasic nature, then we eat foods that are tamasic. right? Which are
Yes.
overcooked, heavy,
Highly
processed, this kind of
Processed.
thing, right? And we're craving the thing that we
Fleshy
are.
foods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're craving the thing that we are, which is a really, they don't say it this way, but I think of it this way, as lower vibration.
Absolutely.
Tamasic is dull, lethargic,
Right.
not interested in life, nihilistic,
Yes.
right? And then from there,
Not to say that there isn't tamasic spirituality as well. You know, people can be in a tamasic spirituality, the worship of Shiva and Kali. In the West, of course, demon worship. And those are, in one way you could say low vibrational, but there is a certain glamour to spiritual darkness. And so that has to be included in these descriptions of the gunas, I believe, that they can't be characterized as all one way. You know,
we have tamasic,
rajasic, passionate, karmic, action, being engaged with women in gold, as Ramakrishna broke it down, fleshy, emotional. You're tied to the world that way.
heavy worker, right? Like very active. I think it's like very active and almost like overactive.
Right. Overactive, but ultimately, any karma is bad karma in that you don't want it. And there is no, truly technically speaking, there is no such thing as good karma. You don't want any, right? Any karma keeps you on the wheel of samsara. You'll keep coming back if you have any karma at all. And so, rajasic, you're tied through that karma to the wheel.
Kind of a chasing. Your rajasic is like a chaser.
Absolutely. Yeah. Passionate.
Passion.
It's
interesting because, we think of passion as, often when we say passion, we think of it in a nice context.
Positive terms.
Yeah. But in this context, it's kind of like still chained to illusion.
Absolutely.
Chasing.
No question. You're chained to illusion that way. And even with goodness, generating good karma, charity, helping others, leading a spiritual life itself. So goodness, light in itself, in a sense, is another illusion, another way of being chained to, this sort of negative interpretation of rebirth, of reincarnation. Don't want to be reincarnated. And so partly a sort of sunken meaning or hidden meaning maybe. Most people who are attracted to transcendental religion are hurt. They've been hurt somehow, hurt by the world, overburdened, immiserated by their experiences with others, immiserated by the suffering of, name countless wars, the sheer magnitude of the cruelty of this world. If you want to transcend, if your desire is to transcend that totally, it often begins from a sort of hurt.
It's like the nature of existence, though, right? Are we born into this?
That sort of fundamental trauma of birth itself, yeah. We're born out of our mother's body right into the waiting jaws of time. You're never too young to die, as they say.
Okay, so we have tamas, rajasic, and tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic.
That's right.
So sattvic is
light,
goodness. The sense of maybe after we've been doing lots and lots of mantra, lots and lots of self-reflection, lots of journaling, self-study, coming to terms with this darkness within us, getting to be friends with the fact that it exists at all, finding peace with it, connecting with the divine on a regular basis, seeing the divine in others, a sense of freedom.
That's the whole process, right? starting from the realization of your ignorance, your darkness, your passionate attachments, moving from darkness to light, of course, guru, but then ultimately, even at a certain level, that transcendental awareness that this is Maya, the world is a temporary illusion, and what truly is transcendental, eternal, is that you're a immortal spirit soul, the Atman. You're part of the effulgence of Brahman, which is the light, the impersonal rays from the personal God. You yourself are part and parcel of Krishna, as they say, but at the same time, a unique spirit soul that has always lived and will always live.
I like the image of you are to God what the droplet of water is to the ocean.
Absolutely.
One and the same, yet part of the whole.
Right. And distinct.
And distinct from.
Right. So in Krishna consciousness, in Sanskrit, the metaphysical term for that characterizes the structure of reality is achintya bheda abheda, which roughly translates as dualism within non-dualism that are incomprehensible, cannot be understood. So the nature of reality itself breaks the law of contradiction, and so cannot be logically assimilated, but can only be known.
Yeah, here we are full circle back to this of why are we here? You know, we exist in these bodies. We exist in this like dualistic nature where there's up and down, there's hot and cold, there's life and death, there's happiness and struggle, and what an interesting video game to be plopped into, you know, and to have no real understanding of how every molecule came together to form all of this physical existence that we see around us.
Right.
And yet at the same time, existence is 99.99% empty space. So it should be logical that we could just put our hand through a table.
Sure.
How are we only existing within the like 0.001% of existence? It's mind-boggling to me that matter is that. And yet we look around and it seems as though we are literally trapped within it.
Absolutely. The real mystery of existence is its whole apparent wholeness. You know, you can't punch a hole through reality and see the other side yourself.
Right.
You know, the other world is truly, you know, your regular mundane experience of existence.
I know there's a painting, it's an esoteric painting, I can't think of which one it is, but where the guy is like poking his head through on the other side of reality, and like his body is still in duality,
right.
Head is in the esoteric. And then we have all of this symbolism, this dream analysis, and this, the things that come to us from the other side. What an interesting, I mean, we are to God with the droplet of water to the ocean. So somehow we're a part of this, whatever that is on the other side,
right.
That is informing us, that is communicating with us. And yet we're kind of like plopped into this race, the relay race from one life to the next.
Sure.
And we're just in this thing and we cannot comprehend what is on the other side. Like something about that just, it gets me.
I mean, that's what drives the sort of, you know, inquisitive natures to God eventually. You know, that drive to know, you know, that rajasic tendency of yours.
Rajasic. That's me.
Try to find out. You want to know, you know.
I need to know.
Need to know.
Which is, I think, what sent me on this path in the first place. So in a way, it's a beautiful thing to be in this rajasic nature of like, I gotta ask every single spiritual seeker I can these same questions,
sure,
so that I can collect, whatever I can. But at the end of the day, I know that it's the simplicity of sitting down and surrendering to God within the mantra. I used to think it was about quietude and emptiness, and I used to maybe lean more in that direction, which there is something still in that, the moments of
Sure.
epiphanies that come through in that, but I am feeling more and more called towards bhakti, and I continue to do the chase, I continue to do the surrender simultaneously. So I feel like I, on one hand, surrender on a daily basis to the existence piece and know that it is all temporary. As Bhagavan Das once said, which seemingly right to me, we are all just grains of sand on the beach of time waiting for the tide. And I'm like, that's it. That's all it is. We're just walking each other home, as Ram Dass says, the surrender. And I feel like that's an interesting piece where we can get really heady with this conversation. We can go as deep as possible with this and go on and on here. And then I love how the simplicity is just go stand in front of the murtis, the deities, and just sing until it all kind of dissolves into this surrender.
Jai.
Jai.
Yeah, I mean, that is as close to the point of human existence, I think, ultimately, as is possible. My radically finite mind and life are satisfied by these practices, which lead to an appreciation of the concepts, which ever more immerse you in this beautiful spiritual experience world. And there was a rabbi I had heard once, someone inquired of this rabbi, and if by some twisted act of science they were able to somehow definitively prove there was no God and spirituality is totally just in the imagination of the devotee and what have you, what would that do to you, Rabbi? And the rabbi said, if they were able to prove that there was no God tomorrow, would I wake up and do the identical things and still practice Judaism passionately and with all of the intensity that I have my whole life? I would still be a Jew. I would still be a rabbi. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, stepping back from the fun minutia of transcendental religion, in a sense, it is just a more enjoyable way of life that has less, horrible drama maybe than other ways of life. And if all it is just a beautiful aestheticization of my existence, and that leads me to a more blissful encountering with a world that is just suffering largely, and subject to the pain of entropy and loss, and if I can put a blissful interpretation of that leads me to lead a love-filled life, then I don't care if Krishna is real or not. Mm-hmm. I do not care. I don't care if, if I'm just totally, maybe objectively wasting my time. I couldn't care less. I would wake up tomorrow and still revel in the nectar of chanting God's names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. I will chant that every day for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. Because it's working.
It works. It has brought me from a more miserable life to a more joyful, community-oriented, caring existence. And, for a wretch as myself, someone who, maybe objectively is a mentally ill, rabid, animal of some kind, delusionally tripping through my life, listening to, starving people on the banks of the Ganges 6,000 years ago, doesn't make a whit of difference. None. I love Krishna just as much.
Beautiful. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing all of your wisdom. And Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for having me.
Blessings.
Okay.
All right.